Give everything to you. As your grace, it flows over my sins. You wash everything away that I have ever been. Oh my God, I am new again. You have brought me into your kingdom, and I have been adopted into your family. As you fill my soul and become my groom, you will go with me from place to place, and you will teach me your ways. I can feel life in my bones again. I can feel my heart begin to beat again. You cleanse my lips, and you cleanse my heart. I will be your mouthpiece. I will be your ambassador. I am no longer what I was. You take my sin. It will be as far from me as the east is from the west. Sin, it leaves my flesh and it leaves my soul. And now there is only room for you, my God. If Christ died for me, who am I still to desire this sin? No. I will die to my sin. This apathy, it is no longer a description of me. This sin will be purged from me. I am no longer what I was. I am a son, I am a daughter of the Most High God.
What is up, Dive? How you guys doing? That's it? You guys only have like a few days left of school. You guys should be like pretty pumped. How you guys doing? There you go. That's better. I'm excited to be back. My name's Wes. I'm one of the teaching pastors, and I feel like, frankly, it's been forever since I've spoken in front of you guys. Since I've been speaking in the adult section for like 3 or 4 weeks now. I feel like it's been a while since I got to hang out with you guys, and I'm pretty excited. Whoa. So are my amps. So are they. Okay. But I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited to hang out with you guys again. We get to start a new series tonight. We get to start a new series called Gravediggers. And it's kind of cool because it actually flows in with what Jordan spoke about last week, which, by the way, did you guys enjoy having Jordan here? Did you guys enjoy him? He was pretty cool, right? He's a pretty cool cat. I got a chance to hang out with him probably 3 or 4 times like the last few weeks. And I think you guys are going to love him. Like, he really has a heart for students. He really has a heart for you guys. And I'm excited to bring him on as part of the team. I think it's kind of crazy if you really think about it. We've got to be one of the few youth ministries in the country that has 3 youth pastors that all are going to be involved in you guys. And all of them are going to love you guys and care about you guys and try and push you guys forward and show you what like this gospel thing, this Jesus thing is all about. Like, that's pretty awesome. And so like, we're excited to bring him part of the team. I know a lot of you guys, like, you really enjoyed his style. You got a lot of good feedback. And I'm excited for that, man. I'm excited to bring him in, and I think you guys should be too. But last week, what Jordan talked about was this idea that we need to be all in when it comes to Christianity. You guys remember this? He said, hey, if you're going to be a Christian, then you need to be all in. Like, your whole life needs to be in on this. And I was thinking about this. It's kind of funny because I had this message planned out for, I guess a couple months. And it's cool how God works like that. Like, it just kind of flowed in to one another. And I was thinking, okay, so if you're going to be all in, you're going to be all in with your life. You're going to be all in with this. You're going to be like, all right, Jesus, God, I believe this is real. I believe this is true. I'm going to give my life to this. What's the first step that you really take in that? I think one of the first steps that you take is realizing your sin and dealing with it. And that's kind of what the series is all about. This Gravedigger series. I think the idea is that in our lives, there's something that kind of lurks in our lives, right? There's something that like lurks in the darkness. There's an evil that lurks in the darkness, and it's not the zombie. It's nothing like that. But there's this sin. There's this sin that kind of lurks in our lives. And I think sin is something that we try to kill a bunch of times. We try to be done with it so many times. And kind of like a zombie, it just keeps coming back. It just won't die. We have to like learn to like double tap it or something. I don't know. But like, it just won't stop. You guys know what I'm talking about? You guys ever had like something in your life, some sort of sin or something you are doing that you know you shouldn't be doing, and you want to stop and you feel like you can't? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where you do it and you mess up and you're like, that is it. I'm freaking done. I don't want to ever do this again. It's over. Never again. And then you do it again. Do you know what I'm talking about? You mess up and you're like, nope, that was it. And you maybe even pray about it. Maybe you even pray about it. You're like, God, just help me with this. Like, God, I want to be a better Christian. I want to be a better example. I want to be a better follower of you. Like, help me to not do this again. And you're like, you feel pretty confident about it. and then you mess up again. And for all of us, that might look different. Some of us, that might be cursing. Some of us, that might be something that we do with our boyfriend or girlfriend that we shouldn't. Some of us, it might be anger. Some of us, it might be gossiping. Some of us, it can be all kinds of things. But a lot of us have something like that in our life, right? Something that we try to quit again and again, and somehow it just keeps coming back. And we're like, why? Why does that happen? When I was in college, I used to play a lot of pranks. Any of you guys pranksters? Any of you guys any of you guys like to do mean pranks? Yeah, see, I'm a horrible person when it comes to pranks. In fact, not long after I became a pastor, I realized I had to stop pranking people because it would end relationships. Like, it would just, people wouldn't want to be friends with me anymore. Because, like, I'm one of those people, I just escalate it, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And I can't tell you a lot of those stories, actually, but I can tell you a few of the more milder cases. And I remember one time when I was in college, the way our dorm was set up, because like when you're a freshman, you have no choice but to be in a dorm. You don't get like a house or apartment. You have to have a dorm, right? And the way that they set up our dorms was you had suite mates. And this is what that meant. So you had a room with 2 people in it, and then you had like this hallway that you shared that was a like shared shower and a shared bathroom. And then you had another bedroom with 2 other people in it, right? So in your suite was 4 people, and it was connected by this bathroom hallway thing, which was kind of creepy, but whatever. And the way that it worked was like you could lock it on the outside, right? So instead of going to the bathroom and locking it on the inside, you locked it on the outside, because then no one from like the other suite could get in. It was kind of weird. It was a weird system. But second semester, you know, like how you get to like pick who you want to be with. Second semester, you're like, oh, I want to like room with these guys, right? So we did that. So we picked 4 people. We were all friends. So we were like, okay, we got this really great idea. What we'll do is we'll put all of our beds in one room. So we moved all of the bunk beds into one room, and we made the other room like an entertainment place. And we're like, this is sweet. This is a sweet setup. And so as a result, like, we would just kind of flow between the 2 rooms. Instead of it being like the typical suite mate, we just kind of had liberty to move wherever. And I remember one of the guys in there, he started playing like pranks on us. And so we're like, well, we'll get him back. So when he goes to take a shower, what we did was each one of us went to these outside doors, and we locked him in. So he's stuck in the bathroom hallway thing. And like, he comes out and he's like, you know, he's kind of trying to mess with us. He's like, I don't even care. And we're like, whatever, we're going to go to class. So we go to class and we go to eat, and we, at the time we were playing like intramural, like flag football, and like we had our practice for that, and we forgot about him. and you know, then we had like, something that night or whatever, and we get back at probably 12 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night. And so he has been in the bathroom since like 6:30 at this point. And we walk in, and like, one of us goes to use the restroom, and like the door's locked, and we're like, oh man, we left him in there all day. And so like we opened the door like kind of quietly, like we're like a little bit freaked out, like maybe he like tunneled his way out of the bottom or something. Maybe he like found a way to squeeze into the toilet, and like we don't know what's going on. And we open the door, and there he is, like just laying on a towel on the floor, like passed out, because he's been in there forever, and it's like kind of hot in there, and he hasn't had anything to eat or drink except maybe like toilet water, I don't know, for like hours and hours. And we're like, oh, this is kind of funny, until we said something, and he instantly woke up. And when he woke up, I mean, he woke up swinging, like he was coming at us. We're like trying to shut the door again, like we're, and I think he actually hit one of my friends. I mean, he was pretty ticked off. And I think this is kind of, in a way, this is how sin works in our life sometimes. I think what we do is we take sin and we try to just kind of block it off in an area. We try to lock a door on it. And we think that's going to be okay. We think like later when we open that door, it's not going to really come at us. But the reality is, like, when we just push sin aside, it comes at us with like a certain kind of ferocity later. Like, it's ticked off. And what we have to literally do is we have to learn how to get rid of our sin. We can't just lock it away somewhere. We can't just lock it in a compartment. We can't just put it away and say, I'm not going to deal with it. Or sometimes we even have this thing that's like, it's almost like a pet sin. It's like a sin that we don't really talk about and no one really knows about, and we have it every so often. And eventually those things in our lives, they just kill us. They just destroy us. And we need to learn, how do we get rid of sin for good? Not that I should have killed off my college roommate. That's not what I'm saying. But we need to learn how to get rid of sin for good. And sometimes we make that mistake. Sometimes we just push it aside and we think it'll be okay. And all it does is it just gains more momentum. It just gains more veracity, and it comes at us and it just rips our life apart. And I think we need to understand that this is a big deal. We need to understand like sin's a big deal in our lives. And sometimes we don't treat it like that, but we need to understand that it is. And to kind of open that up, I want to go to Galatians. So if you guys have your Bibles, if you don't have a Bible, there's Bibles on both sides. They're the orange books right there. So if you do not have a Bible, please go ahead and grab one. Go ahead and grab a Bible. It's going to be Galatians 5. Who's the first person to get there in one of the orange Bibles? Just shout out the page number. Galatians 5. And if you don't have it, it'll also be on the screen. Although, 804, page 804. So go ahead and turn there. It's different in mine, obviously. But, all right. So we're going to be in chapter 5, verse 16 and 17. Then we'll skip over to verse 24. So it says this. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh, and they are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things that you want to do. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. And let's go ahead and skip to verse 24. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh along with all of its desires. So what's it saying there? Number one, it's saying that two things essentially live inside of you. As a Christian, if you give your life to Christ and you say, this is what I want to do. All right, I want to be a Christian. I want to live my life the way that Jesus calls me to live. There's two things that essentially live inside of you at that point. And this is in your notes. I don't think I made a slide for it, but it's in your notes. And there's two things that live inside of you. One of them is the Spirit, and one of them is the flesh. So that's in those two spots right there, the Spirit and the flesh. The Spirit and the flesh, they live inside of you. And it says that these two things are against each other. The Spirit and the flesh are against each other. They're not on the same team. They battle against each other. It says that the Spirit is against the flesh, and the flesh is against the Spirit, and it pulls you away from the things of God. So what does that mean? It means that ultimately the flesh is sin. Like the Bible, it's kind of confusing because you think like flesh, but that's not really what it means. It just means that the flesh is sin. The flesh is the things that will pull you away from the God. Ultimately, it means that the flesh is the things of this world. It's the desires of this world. And it's things that will pull your focus away from God. And the Spirit is the things of God. That's God's Spirit living inside you. And it's the things of the kingdom. It's the things of God. And obviously these two don't mix, right? Like sin and God don't mix. They battle against each other. And that's why sometimes we have like this internal conflict, right? Because it says that the things of the flesh will literally make you do the things that you don't want to do. So there is something inside your spirit, man, that says, I know that I shouldn't do this. I know that I shouldn't engage in this. I know that Jesus tells me that this will not be good for my life. I don't need to engage in this, but the flesh will try to pull you into that. And that's how sometimes we have that internal conflict. Have you guys ever felt that way? If you're really honest, has there ever been a moment where there was something that you knew it was sin? You know, there's something that you're like, without a doubt, this is sin. Without a doubt, this is something I shouldn't do. But there was a part of you that kind of wanted to do it. Do you know what I'm talking about? If you're honest, there was like a part of you that was like, but maybe I should just try it. Maybe I should just see what happens. Maybe I don't even care if I shouldn't do it just for the moment. Maybe I'll feel bad later, but for the moment, maybe I just try it. Maybe I just do it. Maybe I just see where that goes. And so there's this eternal conflict. That's what that is. The flesh is trying to pull you one way, and the Spirit is trying to pull you another way. And we need to understand that. We need to understand what sin looks like. We need to understand what sin is, which asks the really obvious question, what is sin? What is sin? If I'd ask you what is sin, what would you shout as just like a general definition of what is sin? Anybody? Rebellion, okay. Anything else? What? Opposite of God. That is actually a very, the very technical definition of sin is absence of God. It's anything that is godlessness. It's anything that's away from God, which is also rebellion, right? So they all kind of flow into each other, but very nicely done.
Mine, by the way.
That did you whisper in his ear? Joe, do you got another one throw up there? Anything you shouldn't do, right? And they all kind of fall in that same category. So it's anything that is not of God. It's godlessness. It's the absence of God. And this can show up in many different ways. There's two main types, I would say, and we do have a slide for this. There's two main types, and there's omission and commission. I don't know, can you guys read that? I should have made it a little bit darker. But there's omission and commission, and this is in your notes. Omission and commission. Do you guys know what the definition of those are? Besides, I guess it's on the screen now. But this is what that looks like. So omission is not doing what you're supposed to. So there is something that you are supposed to do and you didn't do it. You can sin in that way. So maybe this shows up with your parents. Maybe your parents want you to tell them when something happens, right? Maybe they're like, hey, I want you to tell me if someone tries to do something they shouldn't, or I want you to tell me if you're invited to a certain place, or I want you to tell me those things and you don't tell them. What is that? That is a sin by omission. There's also the sin of commission. So that means that you do what you shouldn't do. And I think this is how we often look at sin. We often look at it as us doing something that we shouldn't do. But we also need to realize that sometimes we don't do stuff that we should do. And we can sin both ways. We can sin both ways. And what does our sin include? Our sin includes several things. I think we need to kind of identify all of those. It's the next slide. What does our sin include? And this is also in your notes. It's our thoughts. So it's everything that we think. It's every thought that comes into our head. We can sin with our thoughts, which is a crazy thing when you really think about it. That's like the standard that Jesus takes it to. Like, we don't often take it to that standard, but that's the standard that Jesus takes it to. Jesus says, man, if you lust after someone in your heart, you've already committed the act. Jesus says if you are angry with someone in your heart, you've already committed murder. He says your thoughts matter. So everything that we think, it counts. Our words count. Everything that we say counts. And everything that we write counts. Everything that we put in a text message, everything that we put in a comment section, it all counts. We can sin with our words. We can sin with our deeds. So the things that we do, we can sin in that way, whatever we choose to do. And then last but not least, and I think this is one that we forget about a lot, we can sin with our motives. Why do we do something? So like Adopt a Cause. Adopt a Cause is a really good thing, and we try to get you guys to come out there and help these families that don't have the things that we have. But do you realize if you go and you help at Adopt a Cause just so you can brag about it and just so you can feel righteous and be like, yeah, I helped these people out. I felt good about that. I felt real good about that. Do you guys realize that's actually sinning? Our motives count too. All of those things are included. And it sounds like a lot to deal with, but we need to be thinking that through, right? We need to evaluate our lives. We need to evaluate why we do things, how we do things, what's the purpose of why we do them, because sometimes we let those things into our lives. And so this leads to kind of an obvious question of how do we deal with sin? How do we deal with that? Like, what do we do? And I think number one, the number one thing that you can do is to not give into temptation and sin. Right? You're going to be tempted. You're going to be tempted to sin. Things are going to be thrown at your way, right? Like those of you that are in high school and even junior high now too, like people are going to ask you to go to parties. People are going to want to date you. People are going to want to do all kinds of things. And you have to understand that you don't want to put yourself in certain spots, right? You have to understand that I don't want to give in temptation. I don't want to give in to sin. Number two, don't tempt others. Don't tempt others. So sometimes we do this too. Sometimes we know that we're going to do something that we shouldn't. And so we want to bring others in on that too. So we feel like a little bit less guilty. We tempt others with our own sins sometimes. We're going to do something that our parents shouldn't say that we shouldn't do, or Jesus says that we shouldn't do, and we want to bring someone else along with us. We try to tempt others. Do you guys realize that it's really important who your friends are? And we want to reach out to everybody, and we want to love everybody. We want to tell everybody about Jesus, but the people that you hang out with on a consistent basis, do you guys realize how much that matters? Like, it really affects your life. I was actually just talking to someone about this beforehand. They asked me like what my major was before I became a pastor. My major was psychology. And in psychology, one of the things that they talk about is you try to emulate the people around you. The people that are your friends, you try to become them subconsciously and sometimes consciously. But you become your friends. You become the way that they act. You talk the way that they talk. You live your life the way that they live your life. And if you're not careful with who your friends are, it'll destroy you. I'll give you an example of this. When I was in high school, I had a buddy named Levi. And Levi, I don't know how to describe this kid other than he constantly got in trouble. Like, it was just always something with him. And if you guys ever had like a friend like that where you're like, my gosh, just give it a break. Like, it was always like, and he was like one of my best friends, and it was always something. He was just that guy, you know? And I remember there was one time, I think we were juniors or seniors, I can't remember. But he stole a guy's girlfriend that went to a different school. And Levi used to do things like this all the time because he was a moron. And I remember one time we were going to a buddy's house, and we were all kind of driving there at the same time. And it was right after this happened. And Levi was in the car in front of us, and then me and my buddy Joey are in a car behind him. And we're driving down like a neighborhood street, and it's like, I don't know how to describe this other than like, it was literally like out of a movie. It was like out of a movie. An SUV pulls up in front of him and slides in front of him and slams on their brakes. And so he's like forced to stop. And we're all like, what in the world? Did this like SUV just like lose control? Like, we're so confused. And all of a sudden, I see like 3 or 4 dudes pop out of this car that are huge. Because I forgot to mention that the girl that he stole was dating a defensive lineman for the football team of our rival school. And these guys were massive. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not like the tallest guy in the world. And in high school, I ran track and everything, so I was skinny. I was this little skinny guy. And Joey's this little skinny guy. And Levi's like this tall. I'm like, oh man, like we're dead. Like we're dead. And I literally watch as they run over and they open his door. And this guy that is like, he's just a mammoth. Like, he's just, like, I'm thinking we're junior boys in high school, and this guy's like a man, you know? Like, he's huge. And he, like, rips open Levi's door, and he gets on top of him and just starts punching him. And I'm like, oh, man, like, I'm freaking out, right? I'm freaking out. And, like, his buddies are, like, coming over our car, and, like, we run out, and I jump on top of this guy in the car. And I don't know what I thought that I was going to do, but like, I'm like, you know, I'm like trying to do something. And like, I'm trying to pull him off, and I broke his belt buckle. So I did break something. I didn't break a bone, but I broke his belt buckle. So I felt good about that. I was like, yeah, when you go to put your pants on in the morning, then I got you, didn't I? Like, but like, I couldn't really do anything, you know? And my buddy, he got his face busted. They had to do plastic surgery on him. He got to pick out a new nose. That's how much they destroyed him. Your sin has consequences in your life. Your sin will do things. I'm sure when he stole this girl, he wasn't thinking that a week and a half later he'd be in the hospital like getting reconstructive surgery on his face, right? He wouldn't think that a couple of his best friends behind him would be put in a situation where they're like, are we going to get the crud beat out of us? Like, what's going to happen? But our sin, it has consequences. His sin had consequences for him. And I had consequences by being friends with him, right? It put me in a spot where, like, I could have been messed up. Who we choose as our friends, it's a big deal. Sin in our life, it has consequences. We need to think that out. We need to understand that. We need to realize that this can mess with us in ways that maybe we weren't planning for it to. And then this, in Romans 8. If you guys want to go ahead and turn your Bibles to Romans 8. Yes, that's right. Got McDonald's on my brain. Romans 8:12 through 15. And it says this, "So then, brothers, we are debtors not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if the Spirit you put to death, the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. For you do not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear." So you guys need to realize this. When you walk by the Spirit, it kills the flesh. When you choose to walk in the things of God, it's going to kill the sin in your life because you can't live in both. And so more often than not, when we have this struggle of falling back into sin, some of that's just that internal thing. Some of it's just because we are born with a sin nature. But a lot of it is because we aren't walking in the Spirit the way that we should. A lot of it is just simply because we are not walking in the way that God has asked us to walk. And as a result, we're not putting our flesh to death. And then it says, if you do, you are not a debt to it. You are not a debt to your flesh. The Spirit kills it. And he says this, I think this is so cool. "For you did not receive the spirit of slavery." He's talking about the sons and the daughters of God. You did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into it. So you guys need to understand when we mess up and we fall back into it, through God, you can overcome that. And we're going to make mistakes. We're not perfect. Nobody is. But you need to understand that a lot of it comes from the life that we're leading. And when we lead kind of this wishy-washy life, right? Last week, Jordan said, hey, if you're going to be a Christian, go all in. Go all in. Don't kind of like ride the line. Like if this is God and this isn't, don't like ride the line, but go all in. And sometimes we live a life where we're kind of half and half. And then we wonder, why is sin so difficult? And it's because we're not really living the way that God has called us to live. We're not really submitting to the Spirit. We're not really going into that lifestyle. We're kind of doing it half and half. And as a result, we're still in debt to our flesh. So we need to realize that. There's this really simple reality that in Christ we have freedom. In Christ we have freedom to live the way that He has called us to live. But in sin, we're in debt. In sin, we're slaves to our sin. We keep doing what it wants us to do. Whatever our thing is that we struggle with, we keep giving into it again and again and again and again because we're slaves to our sin or trapped by it. And so I think we need to decide, are we going to take down our sin? Are we really going to start living the way that God has called us to live and take down our sin? Or is sin going to take us down? We have to decide, are we going to let sin dig a grave for us, or are we going to dig a grave for sin and be done with it? Because this is the reality. I think I look at my generation, and I look at your guys' generation, and I think, man, we are literally walking hand in hand into the grave. We are fine with walking into the things of this world, and we get excited about it. We tell people this is what we should do. This is what you should be doing. You should be partying, and you should be doing things with guys and girls, and you should be doing drugs, and you should be cursing, and you should be angry. And this is what you should do. We tell each other that. We boast each other up when we do it. And we walk hand in hand into the grave. We walk hand in hand into something that is going to kill us. And we need to say we're done with that. Instead of just walking into a grave, instead of letting sin just bury us, we need to bury our sin. And I know it's not easy. I know it's difficult, but we need to do that. And here's the 3 ways that you do that. Number 1, do not give in to temptation. We talked about this. Do not give in to temptation and sin. Number 2, do not tempt others. And number 3, on your notes that was missing earlier, repent. Repent and seek forgiveness. This is one of the things that we need to do. We need to talk about our sin. We need to admit our sin, whether that's to your parents, whether that's to an accountability partner, whether that's to someone like me or Chelsea or Cameron or one of our leaders, Or whether that's to God, maybe you just get in your room and you pray and you confess it to God, but in some way, somehow, you need to admit your sin. You need to admit that junk. And you need to seek forgiveness, and then you move on. You don't keep going back into it. You realize this idea that I am not a slave to that junk anymore, and you move on. And that's what I really want for you guys, man. I really want you guys to understand what this really looks like. I want us to be a people that yes, we're going to sin to an extent because it's our nature, and we are not perfect, and we are not Jesus. But we don't walk blatantly into sin. We don't keep going back to the same sin again and again. We don't bring others into our sin with us. And when we do mess up, man, we call out to God about that. We ask for forgiveness. And then we turn aside from sin. That's what I pray for you guys, man. That's what I pray for Dive Youth Church.